So our final snippet for this week looks at Obama's first couple of years in office, which really are dominated by this chart. Massive job losses caused by the 2008 financial crash. And one of the things I like about this chart is it compares the job losses for every post-war recession up until the financial crash. And you should see sort of two things from this chart. The first is that the number of job losses from the 2008 crisis are simply far greater than previous post-war U.S. recessions. Secondly, just to get back up to the let's get rid of me here. Just to get sort of back up to the level of the 2000 of what had been the crash job total takes around 72 months. That's 6 years. So it's both a very severe and a very long recession, causes huge problems in the economy. Obama's initial approach to deal with this is through a very large stimulus package, sort of similar to what we've seen from Trump in the last month, basically trying to throw money into the economy to keep people afloat, to encourage them to buy consumer goods. But unlike the Trump stimulus package, which got support from both Republicans and Democrats, the Obama stimulus package gets no support from Republicans in the House at all. Only a couple of Senate Republicans back it. And conservatives, this is a conservative cartoon from the time, strongly attack it. It gets strongly attacked on Fox News on grounds that basically this was just pork spending for Democratic constituencies. And as with any large spending group, there is some waste. And so even though as a whole the stimulus does at the very least make a bad economic situation not worse, it causes significant problems for Obama, especially given that Obama on economic issues had campaigned as something of a moderate. He's hampered by the fact that because the recession is so deep, the stimulus does not immediately lead to a decrease in unemployment. Indeed, unemployment rises during the Obama years. Obama pushes forward an ambitious program to increase regulation of Wall Street, as the Dodd-Frank bill, named for its co-sponsors, Connecticut Senator Chris Dodd and Massachusetts Congressman Barney Frank. This is a wide-ranging bill, but it's complicated to explain to the public, and it doesn't really help Obama's standing. And then Obama pushes through a major health care provision, called what we know as Obamacare, which gets no Republican support at all, and which does violate the precepts that he had offered in the campaign. And in the 2008 campaign, he said that he wanted to deal with health care, but he would not include a provision for a mandate, that is, requiring people to purchase health care if they didn't have it. He changes his mind in 2009, pushes through the program, very aggressive public relations campaign where he promises Americans that that no one would lose their doctor as a right to the bill. It turns out it's mostly true, but it's not entirely true. And as we'll see next week, this causes him some real problems. So Obama, even though initially extremely popular in the aftermath of the election, and with greater than 60% popularity in 2009, quickly loses that popularity, and by early 2010, as many Americans approve of his performance as disapprove of his performance, he becomes a much more polarizing figure. And critical in that was the emergence of this new sort of amorphous group called the Tea Party, which protested Obama on policy issues, that he was spending too much money, and on cultural grounds that he was vaguely un-American. You see some resonance to those Palin 2008 rallies from the Tea Party. So who were the Tea Party? They were disproportionately men. They were disproportionately white, and they were disproportionately older voters. And the kind of core element of the Tea Party appeal from scholars who have looked at them is this, that they were not necessarily opposed to government spending, but they were adamantly opposed to government spending for groups that they saw as unworthy of the spending, and that especially applied to undocumented immigrants. And so an anti-immigrant approach was a kind of core element of the Tea Party appeal, but this was in some ways a cultural resistance, and they saw Obama embodying an America that they did not recognize. They provided extraordinary grassroots support for the Republican Party. In 2010, early in 2010, there was a special election for the U.S. Senate from Massachusetts. This was a seat previously held by Ted Kennedy. He had held it for 37 years, passes away in 2009 from brain cancer. The Democratic nominee, the Attorney General of the state, begins the race 40 points ahead, but she winds up losing in just an incredible upset to the Republican candidate, Scott Brown. And Brown's campaign is heavily runs against the health care bill in particular. And the message seems to be that if even in Massachusetts, a Democrat can't win, this suggests that the Obama policies really are quite unpopular. And the 2010 midterm elections confirm this. All of the bright red congressional districts are districts that are picked up by the Republicans from Democrats. The light blue districts are districts that go in reverse. There are only a couple of them. One is Delaware and one is down here in New Orleans. What's striking from these bright red districts, and I like this map for this reason, one thing you might notice is that a lot of these districts seem like they're very big. It's particularly rural and ex-urban districts that move towards the Republicans in 2010. So this is beginning of something, basically a kind of a realignment, which will intensify during the Trump era. The Republicans would have done even better in 2010, except for the fact that this kind of activist, ultra-conservative base within the party nominates a handful of simply unelectable figures. In Nevada, Republicans choose a hardline, longtime Nevada political named Sharon Angle, who had a number of sort of far right statements, basically racist statements against Hispanics. And when she's called on them, she says that she doesn't realize that the people that she were insulting were Hispanic. She thought they were Asian, which doesn't really help her in any way. In Colorado, the Republicans nominate a far-right candidate named Ken Buck, who eventually will, just before the election, will go on national TV, issuing a strong denunciation of homosexuality in a state that's not far right on gay rights issues. And then in Delaware, the vice president's former Senate seat, Joe Biden, had resigned. It was expected his son would run. He chooses not to. The statewide congressman, the former governor of Delaware, named Mike Castle, gets into the race. Republican, moderate. This seat would have gone 2-1 for the Republicans if he had gotten the nomination. But he's upset in the primary by this woman, Christine O'Donnell, who runs as a Tea Party Republican. In the aftermath of her victory, she'd gotten very little attention up until that time. It comes out that Miss O'Donnell had a rather colorful background, including a period in which she had dabbled in witchcraft, which doesn't quite fit in with the hard right image, and which leads to this just surreal ad trying to rescue her campaign.
I'm not a witch. I'm nothing you've heard. I'm you. None of us are perfect, but none of us can be happy with what we see all around us. Politicians who think spending, trading favors, and backroom deals are the ways to stay in office. I'll go to Washington and do what you do. I'm Christine O'Donnell, and I approve this message. I'm you.
Ultimately, a majority of Delaware voters decide that they're not Christine O'Donnell. Even then, the Republicans gained 6 seats, the states that are in pink on this map. They would have gained 3 more in Nevada, Colorado, and Delaware if they had nominated less conservative candidates. And so this, one of the things that this 2010 election shows is a tension between the activism of the party's base and potentially nominating more electable candidates. But regardless, there's this huge rebuke to Democrats in 2010. But in the aftermath of the election, the defeated members are still in office, and there is a major measure which gets through. Recall the Clinton military policy of "Don't ask, don't tell," which was a disaster. It leads to the expulsion of hundreds of gay and lesbian military members, and there's kind of this aggressive efforts to root gay soldiers in particular out during the 1990s. Obama had opposed "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" in the campaign, but had done very little to bring about its repeal during his first 2 years in office. In the lame duck election, there is a genuine bipartisan effort, including Kirsten Gillibrand, the newly appointed Democratic senator from New York, who's in the process of, she'd been a fairly conservative congresswoman and then becomes this ultra-liberal senator once she's elected statewide. Susan Collins, a moderate Republican from Maine, and Joe Lieberman, the independent senator from Connecticut. And the 3 of them are able to push through a repeal of "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" in the lame duck session, which allowed gay and lesbian service members to serve openly. This does not apply to transgender service members. That will come later in the Obama years. But this chart gives you a sense of how many service members had been expelled from the military as a result of the ban pre 2010. So it's a reminder that sometimes defeated members of Congress, now that they don't have to worry about re-election, suddenly discover their consciences, and that's exactly what happens in the repeal of "Don't Ask, Don't Tell." So that's pretty much all that we have for this week in terms of snippets. I hope everyone is well and is staying safe, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.